Hello, I'm in the small market town of Olney in Bedfordshire, and it's famous for William Cowper and John Newton, this museum here. Famous as they call it, the home of amazing grace. So it's well worth looking around this if you haven't. We chanced upon this, we were going to Olney for another reason, and we're really pleased to have found the museum. So here's the entrance. It's actually a museum and an extremely wonderful garden as well, so well worth visiting that too. This is a noticeable just inside, Amazing Grace, world famous hymn since 1773, written by Reverend John Newton of Olney, and we'll see some of his history. It's a shocking history that he had. This is Amazing Grace in different languages. Now, I'm not really knowing most of these languages, but if you have a quick look, maybe you've got recognise your language there. But it is famous around the world, of course. It is possibly the most famous hymn ever written, and certainly one of the most beautiful and most meaningful. So you can see the different countries of the world, and I recognise the Spanish because my wife's Argentinian and we belong to a church that has a lot of Spanish speaking people in it. So there we are, different languages. Certainly some of these I don't recognise, but maybe you can see yours. Actually, if you write on the bottom, if you see your language, it would be great to know. So I'm hoping this video does get watched for a few people, because it's well worth visiting this museum. Olney is not a place you perhaps come to otherwise, but certainly really recommend it. A day out, and the garden is so beautiful too. Actually, we visited the garden first to have some sandwiches, and I'll just show you a bit of the garden because it's quite extensive, and don't want to make the video too long, so there's sell some plants as well. You can get some idea of how large the garden is. Just walk along a bit and just take in some of the beautiful scents as well. So it's a beautiful garden generally. Lots of interesting plants I'd never seen before, so we're trying to learn from some of the plants as well. And there's an orchard as well. There's apple trees and pear trees. This is one of the ones we saw, and I couldn't remember what it was. Did look it up, and it's bladder something. I can't remember the second part of that, but you can see the bladderkine formation there. Apparently it has some beautiful yellow flowers when it's young as well, and some generally some very interesting plants here. And round the corner there's some much larger part of the garden as well, and this is a summer house apparently that Cowper used for writing some of his verses. He wrote something called God Moves in a Mysterious Way. It might not be quite as familiar as John Newton's, but he certainly was an excellent hymn writer. It's coming down one of the other walkways, so plants everywhere and huge variety. There's an old pump here too, and a beautiful little pond as well with some lilies in it. There's a touchscreen here where you can watch a video before you go in. And here's the entrance to the museum itself. One of the things that apparently Olney was famous for is lace, so the top floor is to do with lace. I don't want to make the video too long, and I haven't really learnt that much about it. We haven't had very long here, but very well worth coming. You can see the kind of detail that they've gone to make the museum really pretty. And the next room's got a portrait of John Newton. John Newton and William Cowper were great friends, and John Newton lived in the vicarage apparently, and Cowper lived in this house, so they were very close to each other. And in this room you will see some musical instruments, and there's a lot more to see than I'm going to be showing here, but just want to give you a taster. There's a guide showing people around the room that I really want you to see, so we'll leave that till the end. And just various manuscripts of Cowper, I think. There may be John Newton's there as well. We haven't had long enough to explore in great detail, but there's some posters on the wall here talking about the life of both of them. One of the rooms has got Cowper's bedroom here, and as you can see, quite a small bed really, called a counterpane apparently. And before we look at the most important room, I think it's the most important room because it shows John Newton's life before he was a Christian. This is lace making. Apparently Olney was famous for lace making, and there's tremendous exhibits here. Here we see the lace making equipment. I've never seen this before. My wife has seen it, apparently. Probably I'm very unobservant, so probably have seen it, but I didn't notice it. But amazing how they managed to make the lace. And this is the most shocking room of all, Newton and the slave trade. You can't believe how degraded man can be, and without God really, man can be extremely degraded. And John Newton was a captain of a slave ship apparently, and you can see how the slaves were kept. You may have seen images like this before, but relating it to the man himself, John Newton, who said, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." And you can see why he thought he was a wretch. Well, we're all wretches really. I don't think any of us is really good. The Bible says none of us is good. But clearly he was so shocked by his past, and he gave his life to the Lord, and then gave his life to abolishing slave trade as well, which apparently the law was passed abolishing it just after he died. So that's a very quick taster of what the museum's like, and highly recommended. So if you happen to be in this part of the country, near Bedford, near Northampton, near Milton Keynes, or just would like to spend the day in a beautiful small market town, then this is the place to be.